Right. Right. All right, everybody. Well, welcome. Hope everybody's having a very nice conference. Yeah, nice. Hopefully, we're not going to get all blown away. I keep hearing rumors of a storm, so geez. Anyway, thank you for coming to this special session. My name is Katie Bringsmith, and I have the privilege of introducing Doug Vandegraff, who has been at our conferences. How many have you done now?
First one was in 14.
Oh my gosh. So I can't do math, so you can figure it out. So 2014, so you've been in a few. And of course, how many of you have been on one of Doug's walking tours of the bars? Yeah, right. It's kind of like Vegas, right? What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. I think we've all been there on Doug's tours. So anyway, I actually really enjoy his book, Notorious Bars of Alaska. And I even assigned it to my students who are like, what the heck? Because it is about historic preservation and it is about Alaskans and people who come together. And believe it or not, a lot of stuff happens in bars beyond just drinking. That interaction, that community, you know, the good and the bad and the ugly. So it's important to document these locations and these sites that in many ways are, you know, part of the fabric of Alaska communities. It helps us understand who we are, our social activities, the laws, and it does provide insights and windows into the past for sure, not just in how Alaskans work, but how they also relax and recreate and get away from all that work. So with that, let me please introduce Doug here and there we go. Oh, I see. That's why it was there. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Katie.
Take care. Okay.
Good afternoon. I realize I'm standing between you and lunch, so I'm going to kind of move through this pretty quickly. But again, I'm Doug Vandegraff. It's a pleasure to be back in Cordova. My third time here. I was last year for the conference back in 15. So why does this happen? Yeah.
Not advancing.
Nope. I don't do that.
Now it will.
Okay, thank you. Seems like it's happened a lot. So today, in the next 20 minutes or so, I'll be talking, I'll give you a short introduction and talk about pre-prohibition bars, post-prohibition bars, and World War II era and statehood bars here in Cordova and other bars. And let me say real quickly, thank you very much for making this a special session. It's in preparation for my walk this evening. I'm talking, and maybe stand closer, is that better? Okay, there you go. All right, that's the move. So yes, I have moved to Alaska in 1983 to take a job with the federal government as a cartographer. That was my career. I worked for the federal government 35 years making maps. And I was 24 there in 1983, and I would have never seen bars like I saw here in this state. And the government sent me all over the state to different places for mapping projects. And I would check out bars, and I was like, oh my God, these are really interesting places here. I'd never seen. Coming from Flagstaff, Arizona, it was a big difference. And so I decided after taking a lot of photos and taking a lot of notes, I thought, man, I should write about this thing. I have enough here to make a book. And I started my project in 1999. And the very next year I was promoted and had to move to Washington, D.C. And I was, how am I going to do this? And then lo and behold, the Library of Congress is not very far from where I was living, and the National Archives was there. And so I just methodically just started gathering more information, coming back to Alaska as often as I could. And it took me 14 years, but the first edition was published in 2014. And the second edition was in 17, and the third edition is going to come out right after the first of this coming year. Just a real quick introduction, if you haven't read my book. alcohol was illegal in Alaska, and way before statehood, when we purchased Alaska from Russia, it was virtually totally illegal. However, there were saloons and just operating in more or less out in the open in places like Sitka and Wrangell and Juneau. The first cannery in this immediate area, Cordova area, was built along Odiak Slough in 1887. Congress figured out they were having no success at prohibiting alcohol in Alaska, so they made it legal in 1899. The Cordova town site was platted in 1908. The Can't Run and Never Will Railroad and connecting the Kennecott Top Mine was 1911, 1938. It was that period right there, 1908 to 1911, that brought in a huge amount of workers working on the railroad in the beginning of the mining process, which prompted a lot of bars to come here in those early years. Prohibition was in 1933, and I consider that as resetting the date as how old a bar can be, because if we had no bars at all, no alcohol legal for sale from 1918 to 1933. So when I talk about, well, this is how old the bar is, it can't be any older than April 7th, 1933. I've used a lot of sources for this presentation, which I love researching Cordova. The State Archives in Juneau, the Daily Times from 1910, 1990, business directories, the ABC, History of the License document, the Historical Society here in Cordova. And for the very first time, I'm thinking of Facebook group, the Cordova Alaska History Buffs, and in particular, Dixie Lambert and Kenny Smith. One of my favorite photos. This is just great. This is apparently the first train to leave Kennecott, March 29th, 1911, full of copper ore. And as I was saying, that period of time when Cordova was just being founded to when they were done with the construction of the railroad, there were, it was estimated there were 26 saloons in little old Cordova. These are 20 of them. I found 20 names here. Out of all of these, the only one that's doing business to this day is the Alaskan Hotel Bar. This is a cool shot. This is First Street in 1910. And there's the Denver Bar there on the left and the Northern there. That was kind of at the corner of First and C. That's where the legislative office is right now. This is the McCormick Hotel Bar. It was called the McCormick from 1908 to 1915. I like this photo because they're right kind of left and center at the bottom. There's a big sign that says McCormick Bar. So when I zoom in on that, this looks to me like a damsel in distress. She is sitting on the lap of a polar bear, and there's a walrus over her left shoulder. And Olympia beer posters are really popular. You can find them pretty easily on the internet. And I looked for this one, and I was not able to find it. So apparently it was custom made for the McCormick. So McCormick was another advertisement for it. This dated 1910. It changed owners and it changed names in 1915. And the new owners, Gottschalk and Cloninger, and of course the bar in connection. The town that was not chosen to be the terminus of the Copper River Northwestern was Cordova. And when the Hotel Northern there on the left was liquidating, the Alaskan Hotel, maybe it was McCormick. Anyway, that time period, they were the hotel that was able to purchase the bar, that is the back bar from that particular hotel in Cordova. So this is right out of the catalog. This is from 1880s. This is the style of bar. It was called the Waldorf. And I don't know what they paid for it. For those of you who are not familiar with this piece of furniture, what that in the front, that's the front bar. That's where you put your drink. That's where the bartender turns around and gives you a drink. It's right there. And this piece, that's the back bar. That's where all the bottles are kept. That's where the cash register is. And this particular model had a little awning over the top. And here's another piece. I'll talk a lot more about the back bar in the Alaskan here in a few minutes. Here's a shot of First Street looking north. probably about 1910, 1911. You can see that's the Spokane bar and the Montana bar and the Stockholm bar, the bar there on the left. That's about where the Igloo Hall is now, and the Shoreline Petroleum gas station, that's about where it is, where these were. And you can see also that's the Cordova house, the Coho. Coho is a hotel. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. Here's a picture of the Mecca Club. That was the Hegg building there on the corner, and it was demolished. And it's about where the chiropractic office is right now. Here's a picture I took of the reception saloon. It was built in 1908. This is from 2015. And at that time, it had a little plaque on it. And the Cordova Chamber of Commerce awarded it the Historical Preservation Award for 1984. And unfortunately, the building has also been demolished. Here's the Windsor. Was built in 1908 as the Burke Hotel. And I don't have a picture of the bar, but this is what the lobby looked like. So I'm imagining the bar, probably a pretty nice place to go. Bar closed in 1916. The hotel was also demolished in 1972. There's an empty lot there now. I love this. This guy is James Wickersham. And he was the man who wrote the Bone Dry Law. If you haven't read my book, Alaska had prohibition 2 whole years before the rest of the nation. So January 1st, 1918. And this was the guy who wrote the law for no alcohol at all in Alaska, not even for medicine. It was really made a lot of doctors really unhappy. And he was a true dry, as we would say, not a wet. He was a dry. All of Alaska's ills were blamed on alcohol. And so I do not think this is a mistake that the Cordova Times surrounded this guy's picture with bar ads. So the northern, the myth, I'm back at the Alaskan Hotel in Cordova House. And the particular, the Manhattan Hotel had Mr. Farrell who ran it. I'll talk about him a little bit. And no, I thought this was really funny. I do not think it was an accident. These are bars in Cordova that were still in business on December 31st, 1917. So the day before Prohibition, when everything stopped. And you can see the ad for the Alaskan Hotel there. And the one ad I couldn't find there was also a Cordova saloon that was in operation as well. Meanwhile, up in Chitna, this time this is 130 miles from Cordova up the railroad, the Hotel Chitna Bar was serving Clarkford whiskey. And there were 2 other hotels, and also the Commercial and the Overland in Chitna that also had a first-class bar. And in McCarthy, 191 miles up the railroad from Cordova, the McCarthy and the Mecca, the Hotel Golden. This is from McCarthy News in November 3rd, 1917. So just about 7-8 weeks from when Prohibition took place. You see at the very bottom, there's an Alaskan bar owned by the same 2 guys that owned the Alaskan bar here in Cordova. So Prohibition, yes, that was 15 years from 1918 to 1933. Alaska really wasn't all that dry. The proximity of Alaska to Canada, which did not have Prohibition, and just the lack of law enforcement and a lot of apathy by a lot of people who lived in Alaska, it wasn't that hard to get booze. I really don't believe that. It was really hard. And the fox farms that existed in this area around Cordova, on the little islands around the Cordova area, also very well known to have stills. So, in the McCarthy area as well, also is known to have, a lot of people had stills and stuff. I don't think, definitely this area had a whole lot of trouble getting alcohol. But when it was finally over, when Prohibition was finally done, the Northern Club reopened up. This is an ad from July 1st, 1933. And the Model Cafe also had a dispensary serving something called Frigidaire beer. And then from May 15th, 1933, a special place is being fitted up at the Alaska Hotel where the flowing beverage will be dispensed. So yes, Alaskan Hotel Bar, and I'm so happy that it's still in the business. It's been in business, is serving alcohol for us since May of 1933. It is one of the 6 oldest bars in Alaska. This is a lady named Fanny Farrell. She was from Latvia. So that's west of Russia, right on in a little town called Riga, right on the Baltic Sea. She married a man named Robert Farrell from Texas. They got married in El Paso in 1908, moved to Cordova in 1909. They bought the Alaskan Hotel in 1921. This is her nephew, Bob Leff, and her. And this is probably about 1944 when this photo was taken. And she died the next year in 1945. And she was known as a shrewd businesswoman. The hotel passed on to her nephews. That's the Leff brothers, Bernard and Bob. And Bob owned it for many years. Her husband, Robert, didn't have any interest, and he moved out of Alaska. There's a pretty good shot of the Alaskan Hotel. You can see the bar entrance there in the corner. And here we go. Here's one of the oldest photos I've seen where you can see that back bar that we talked about a little bit earlier. And there's that same awning. I consider it to be the best preserved piece of the ghost town of Cordova. They're drawing, you can see the awning again, the stools, people sitting on stools here. This is a 1948 photo. More recent photo. There's the back bar there on the right. And so, yes, the sign. I took this photo in 2015. You might have been on that walking tour the other night, where she was talking about, the owners of the Alaskan in protest put this upside down. Yeah, maybe that might. Another story I heard was that they ordered the sign, and when it was delivered, the owner wasn't in town, but he left explicit instructions to mount the sign with the word Alaskan on top. So there you go. And so, yeah, the other story, of course, is, so if you're someone who has passed out on the sidewalk and underneath the sign, and you wake up, you'll know immediately where you are. Lots happened to Alaskan Hotel. It's kind of standing out by itself right now. Talk a little bit more about that in a couple of minutes too. Talk about the club bar. That's about where the Copper River Fleece store is now. It was there pretty early on in 1922. It's kind of a gentleman's club. You go play pool, you play cards, have a soft drink. But when Prohibition ended, I can't prove it was open in 1933, but it was definitely open in 1934, calling itself a billiard hall. And you can get a real glass of beer there. And then a little bit later on, when the Von Brocklin family bought it, they advertised that they had the longest bar in Alaska. Here is a photo of the interior. Another one from 1950. The Von Brocklins owned it for a number of years. Donald and his brother Kenny, or they call him Kenny. Both of them were from Washington State. And Don owned it with his brother Kenny and Bill Sherman until 1973. And then Ken owned it co-owned it from 1956 to 1981. It was the Club Cafe is where the 1963 fire started. And took out that whole block there. And it was rebuilt. I know you can see that sign there, right there. It says club bar, liquor store, bowling, motel, and cafe. So it wasn't always just the club bar. It was like a whole complex. And I'll talk about that in a minute too. Here's the good shot of the bar area after post-fire reconstruction. So yes, the club bar, the cafe, and there was a speed wash, and they called it the liquor store, the bottle shop. But when the hotel was called the Prince William is still here. That is I'm going to talk about Robert von Brockman, who was son of Don. That is not his picture. That's an artist there. There in the corner, they're advertising his paintings. So Robert owned the club, incorporated this whole conglomerate from 1981 to 1993. He was elected mayor of Cordova. This was in October '89, 7 months after the oil spill. There were some financial problems. There were some other problems. He took his own life in 1993, and the ownership of the club passed on to his brother, Thomas von Brockman. Thomas said that Robert was a troubled man in a troubled town during troubled times. The liquor license transferred to the Flying Dutchman pub in 1998, and that was the end of the club bar. The Coho. And this is right next door, was right next door to the Alaskan. It's been in business for a long time in the pre-prohibition days. And it came back to life, of course, in 1934, owned by a lady named Gertrude Rody from Oklahoma. The Nichols brothers, they were from Turkey. They owned it for a while. A man named Christopher Theodore in 1960 owned it. And then Jay Hunnison and Bud Vig during the 60s. It's been called the hotel. It's been called the house. And this one particular advertisement shows both, house and hotel. This Jay Hunnison, he called himself Hard Luck Harry. He was from Canada. And he was a bar owner, a gambler, a pilot, and a poet. And you know what this, I just bought this, Alaskan Barroom Ballads. And there are some, it says, nursery tales and for adult males and liberated ladies. And I'll read some of these things tonight on our walk. He married a lady named Edna. She was from Canada. Also, she was a singer, a guitar, and a banjo player. Entertained for many years inside the Coho. His partner Bud, he was from Idaho. He had bars in Fairbanks and Seattle as well. William Reed bought it in 1984. He owned it during the oil spill, again, troubled times. And Delbert Wickham and Doreen, his wife, bought it in 1996. And Doreen was known as the sourdough queen. She would cook in the cafe that joined there in Polo. She would make the best sourdough pancakes. Delbert died in 2010, and that guess he and his wife probably didn't pay federal income taxes for a long time. So the government came to collect, and ownership of the Coho passed to the city of Cordova, who declared it surplus in 2018, and then in 2019 sold it to the Cordova Telephone Company. It looked like this for a while, and then it got torn down on December 3rd, 2019. This was a shame. Again, a building that's been around for so long, 1908. The bell that hung over the bar went to the highest bidder. In this case, the owner of the Kayak Cafe. We walked to the Coho in 2015. I took a bunch of pictures, and so I'm glad I did. So here is the bar, the back bar that you see there in the Coho. And a bunch of Alaska Historical Society people sitting there at that table right there. But you can see the foosball table and the shuffleboard and the pool table. I had just written my book. It was just only less than a year old. And so I was signing a few copies then. I'll miss that bar. It's too bad that it's gone. There was another bar, the Imperial, and they're right by the Lathrop Theater, the Empress Theater, the Lathrop building, owned by a guy named Bob Korn. And Colonel Korn, yeah, it was before Korn, these couple other guys owned it, and pool, billiards, and cards, and dispensary. Here's a picture of Mr. Korn. He was from Missouri. He moved to Cordova in 1920 because his sister postmaster. When he retired from there, he bought the bar and the taxi service in 1936. He was a co-owner of the Alaska Hotel Bar and the Powder House, the public swimming pool here in Cordova, and a local mountain, Mount Robert Korn, both named in his honor. That's him leading a parade down First Street And that's this Imperial bar right there. There's another shot of it. I don't know if it was in the Imperial when this photo was taken, but that is definitely it. And the Empress Theater right to the right of that. A couple advertisements, and that apparently is a Sadie Hawkins party there in the Imperial Hotel or bar in 1950. 1953 fire took out a big portion of that block there, and that was the end of the Imperial Bar. This picture I took of the Anchor Bar built by the city dock. This is from 2015. The Hossicks, Hugh Hossick and his wife Antonina, or Tony as they called him. He was born and raised in Cordova. She was from Massachusetts. She got divorced, brought all her 5 kids, moved from Massachusetts to Cordova to see because her brother told her this would be a good place to live. They got married and they bought the Tavern Bar in 1960, which is right next to the club, right on, the ill-fated 1963 fire. So, but from 1950 to 1963, this was the Tavern Bar owned by a guy named James Nicolette. Everyone called him Nick, and Clyde Ehrlich. I'm pretty sure that's them. That's Nick on the left and Clyde on the right. So you can see the picture. And as it was next door to the club, it went up in flames there in 1963. So they moved the bar. They decided to leave First Street, and so they bought this building there on the right and turned it into the Anchor Bar in 1963 after the fire. Probably opened. This photos from the post-earthquake 1964. It's probably didn't actually open to 1964. Another photo I took of the interior of the Anchor Bar in 2015. I counted 50 people. When we started the walk in 2015, I counted 50 people on our tour. This is mostly, Alaska Historical Society people that you see here in this photo. Yeah. And the pandemic was particularly hard on a lot of bars in Alaska. They were definitely hard on the Anchor, and it has never fully recovered. It is currently for sale. Powder House in 1953. This is just about a mile outside of town on the Top River Highway, right by Lake Eyak. Here's Pierre DeVille. He was born in Cordova, and he was a son of French Pete DeVille, who was one of discovered the gold claim on Douglas Island that became the Treadwell mine. And he was a fisherman, taxi driver, and a bar manager. And his brother built the Powder House. So if you go tonight, you'll see this little bust of him there in the bar. So this is a survey of the Powder House Point, as they call it. So this is a BM survey from 1954. And you can still see 1954, the Powder House. So you know what I'm talking about? It took a lot of dynamite and blasting powder to make the Copper River and Northwestern Railroad. So this is the house where they stored all the powder. And you can see to the right there, that's the old dynamite catcher's mark as well. So I superimposed the survey on top of an aerial photo to kind of see where the bar is compared to where the real Powder House was, and they're separated by a little bit. The real Powder House was closer to the highway than the actual restaurant or the bar is now. And the bar sits like almost right on Lake Eyak. And I love this. Could have thought of a greater slogan. I got blasted at the Powder House, and known for having good food as well. And this particular advertisement from 1985 says it's on the original site of the Copper Railroad Powder House. And sunshine, cold drinks, relaxing atmosphere. Come join us on the deck. And they have a killer deck. It is a really nice place to be on a sunny day, that is for sure. Bill's Bar, also on the ill-fated block there on First Street. And that's Bill Sherman, his partner, Bill Grogan. That's why they called it Bill's Bar. Then you can see him there and the little bell hanging over the bar. Does everybody know what the bell is, what the significance is? You ring the bell. If you ring the bell, you buy everybody a drink in the bar. That's the rule. And it's caught some people by surprise when they didn't realize that. Some people might remember that when when the whole block caught fire, that somebody had the idea, stick a dynamite and try to stop the fire from spreading. So they threw it into Bill's bar. So that was double whammy for Bill's bar. And there's the coho. You can see the sign for it there on the right. There's some other bars that I ran across. There was a Dan's owned by a guy named Dan McCarthy in the early 30s. A book by A.C. Swallen called the Cordova I Knew. He talks about the Drift Inn, the Last Chance, and the Marine Bar. I haven't found anything really about them. There was a Rockies bar that was right by where the Copper Valley Telecom office. A little bar owned by the Reeds. That was right where the Radio Shack is now, or the old Radio Shack. And there was an Alley Cat Tavern. There was a Club EAC that was just also out there on the Copper River Highway, just only a mile or so out of town. And there was a Flying Dutchman pub for a while. And it was liquor license transferred to Harbor Lights. That was right like on the north side of the Cordova Center. There were also other people will say, "Oh, well, why didn't you talk about the Black Sheep?" Well, here I'm talking. It was really more of a restaurant with a bar, and I make that distinction. There's a true bar you can get something to eat, maybe, but you walk into an establishment, they ask how many, you're in a restaurant, and that's what you would. You go to the Black Sheep. It was at mile 6, Copper River Highway, and they had a kind of bar type things to do, like the beer drinking contest, and the winner compete with the Coast Guard champion on Saturday night. And then the Reluctance, again, a restaurant with a bar. Back in the 80s, the lounge was called the White Whale, but they celebrated New Year's Eve in it, just like a lot of other bars. I made a map. I got some copies up here. It shows you all the locations of all these bars that were once here in Cordova. And I have a few copies here, and as well as a couple copies that I didn't know I had of my first edition of my book. Yeah, I'm pretty easy to find. I got a website, notoriousbars@ak.com. I got a Gmail address, and I will take any questions you might have. Dave. Yeah, that's like from ancient times, and I think it's meaning a gathering place, place of celebration. Oh, yeah, origin of the name Mecca. Now, without getting too much sidetracked, the guy who owned the Mecca in McCarthy, when the Kennecott mine closed in 1938, he moved and took the name with him to Kodiak. And the Mecca bar is still in business in Kodiak. And then he bought the other bar, another bar in Fairbanks in Mecca. Both of those bars are still in business. The Mecca in Kodiak and Fairbanks. Yes. Greece. Greece. It was in the cafe. What started the fire? The 1963 fire. It was a grease fire in the club cafe. That's a really good question, because everyone's talking about the rain and the wind and everything for tonight. So what I think more risk, if the weather just gets better, great, we'll do something else. But we're gonna take transportation to the powerhouse. We'll have a drink there, and then we'll drive back into town and probably have a drink at the Alaskan, and then call it a night. This will be the shortest bar tour I have ever done. Compared to like being in Juneau trying to do 7 in one night, we're only going to do 2. Now, again, if it's suddenly great weather, well, maybe we'll walk a little farther and I can point some other things out. But that would be great. I'm not counting on that. So at 9 o'clock, we'll meet and we'll meet in front of the Cordova Center right after the banquet. And we're going to go to the Powder House, and I'll talk more about the Powder House out there. And then we'll have a drink, and then we'll go back to the Alaskan. Yes. Yeah, so that's a question. Why are the number of bar licenses in a fishing town like Cordova going down? Is that what you're? Yeah, yeah. Are still alive and well in the state, and a lot of it, I think, kind of just goes along with the community. It's, I kind of thought, I remember thinking when all the pot shops opened that, oh, this might be a big detriment to the bar industry, and it hasn't really happened that way. But kind of like any other town in Alaska, if there is the population to support it, it'll continue to thrive. And it's unfortunate, sure, that there are bars like the Alaskan that's been around for 91 years. You know, that it's been for sale since I was here last in 2015. They wanted $1 million for it in 2015. They want 1.2 now. And I hope somebody buys it. You know, I do. I hate to see something like that. I'm getting sidetracked. Did that answer your question? Probably not. Well, that'd be great. Thank you. Is it 45 minutes?
Want to move all the odd number sessions into the theater, so that when they're giving us some trouble. So all the odd numbers are gonna be in here, but we're gonna do this one.
So yeah, Pat, I got 20 maps. If you want a copy of map. You bet. Thank you.
Good job. Okay, bye Zoom people.